Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for the Created Embroidered Cactus Patch tutorial today. My name is Tessie and I'm here with the Aurora Public Library. So today we are going to be creating a cactus patch. So we embroider a cactus based off of a pattern that I created, and then all you have to do is attach some felt to it, a safety pin, and then you can pin your patch wherever you'd like. So this is a craft that is for a beginner intermediate embroiderer. So today we're going to be using some stitches that are pretty simple, nothing too crazy, but I'm not going to be walking us through the different very beginner embroidery steps, so how to start embroidery, how to end it. I'll mention it, but I won't show you guys as much. So before you start this tutorial, if you've never embroidered before, I recommend maybe going on YouTube, check out some embroidery videos, and then you can come back here. But if you've embroidered a little bit, then this will be a very simple, fun little craft for you to do. And so the template for creating the embroidered patch is going to be with this video, and I'm just going to show it at the beginning of the video as well. But the materials that you need to make your embroidered cactus patch is your embroidery hoop. You'll need some embroidery linen, so you can use a variety of fabric as long as it's not too loose. But you can use scrap fabric if you'd like, just because we're going to be embroidering over it. I just use some white fabric, so that makes it a lot easier to see your colors. You're going to need embroidery needles or just sewing needles, whatever you prefer, and embroidery thread in whatever colors that you'd like. So I picked these colors for the cactus, but you can change the colors depending on how you'd like it. You'll need some scissors, you'll need a safety pin, some felt, and a hot glue gun to put everything together. So most of the stuff, if you embroider already, you'll have readily available, so it's not something that's a very expensive craft or something that you really have to go out and buy stuff for, unless you've never embroidered before. And for the first part, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the stitches that we use to make the embroidered cactus patch, and then we will move on from there. So the first stitch that I will show you is called the Satin Stitch. So this one is a relatively simple stitch. It's just a straight stitch used to fill in gaps. So all you do is you go ahead, thread the needle through, and then just go right back in and create your line. And then you'll come back up, near it, the first stitch, you'll come up and then back down, and then keep going. And you can experiment with how close you are getting, or how far away, or how long you want your stitches. But this is basically a filler stitch. More. Like that. So we're going to be using the satin stitch for the pot. That's the best for the inside of the pot. And for those of you who don't want to end up using the stem, that'll be a great filler for inside the cactus and inside the flower. There is your satin stitch, a bunch of straight stitches just side by side. So for our next stitch, we are going to be I'm going to be showing you how to do the stem stitch. And so for the stem stitch, you come out of your fabric, you kind of make a loop, and then you go back in. And what you'll do is you won't pull all the way, but have your loop open like this, and then you'll come back up in the middle of the loop, and then pull everything tight. And then you'll begin with another loop, go in, then come up right next to the end of the first stitch. And then pull. And you'll keep going like that. And the stem stitch is great for outlining, and it is great for filling in as well. For our last stitch, we will be making the Colonial Knot. So this knot is going to be the most intricate stitch that we'll have in our pattern. So in the pattern, we're going to use it to create some texture in the flower, and perhaps in the pot if you're feeling ambitious, but you don't have to. It's mostly for the flower. But the Colonial Knot, once you get the hang of it, it's not that difficult. It's just one of the more harder stitches for this pattern. But to start with this stitch, you'll come up through your fabric. So I have an example right here. You'll come up through your fabric and make an inverted C. So like that. What you'll do is you'll take your needle and you'll put it on top of the thread and then put the point underneath like this and lift it up. And then while you're holding on to that, you can take the other end of your thread and then loop it on top of your needle like this. And you can kind of see there's a bit of a figure 8, so that's what you're aiming for. Then you'll take the tip of your needle, put it in besides your entry point, and go down. And then what you'll want to do is pull it a little tight around your needle, like that, while it's going through the fabric. Pull it here. And then you will have your Colonial Knot. So this is a great stitch for detailing. Now that we've learned our different stitches that we're going to be using for today's project, I went ahead and I outlined the picture that I want. So you can either, there'll be a small template in the link below with the video that you can print out and use that to trace, or if you just want to freehand your cactus, you can definitely do that as well. And you just trace it out with just a pencil on your fabric. So using white fabric, embroidery fabric is the best. You can notice that I have a little stitch on here, so this is fabric that was pre-stitched, so we can just ignore that dot. But basically you outline your cactus and you choose the colors. So today we're going to be using green for the cactus, pink and yellow for the flowers, and then I'm going to make my pot blue. But you can use whatever embroidery thread that you have, or make variations based on your own preferences. So our first stitch that we're going to make is our stem stitch. So I've already done one example for you guys to show you. We're going to go ahead and do the inner lines of the cactus a slightly darker green. So the inside of the cactus I've chosen a very light green that I like, and then next level up I'm doing for the inner outline, so there's some contrast, and then finally for the little spines that we're going to do last is the darkest green. So I'm hoping that'll come out nicely. And then I'll go ahead and work through one of the lines so you guys can see the stem stitch for that one. And for those who are beginners for embroidery, so since it's beginner intermediate kind of pattern, for those starting off your stitch, what you can do is just leave the thread hanging. So I didn't do a knot or anything like that. I don't like using knots just because they cause tension and you can kind of see it Eventually that hanging thread is just going to get incorporated in the rest of the pattern and it'll get secured that way. And if it doesn't, at the very end I'll secure those threads. So it kind of goes crisscrossed all over like we did with the examples. You can see some of the threads are secured. But to start with, so we're going to do a stem stitch, if you remember from earlier in the video. So I go up with my needle, come through, and we're going to make a loop. Through, and then back up, almost near to the entry point with the first one, and then pull up. Go back down, and you can play with how far away you go through or how close you come back up, just for different types of stem stitches. Down, and then back up. You'll see stem stitches done in various different ways, like you might have learned one way where you kind of go up and then go back over, like that. You just go through. I personally just like going through the fabric and then back up. That's the way I prefer to do it, but there are other ways to do the stem stitch. Then you have that inner line. I'm going to go ahead and just go right back over that top bit just to get back under so I can start the new line right up here. And then you'll notice that I'm using very thick thread. So if you're a beginner, I recommend using the thick thread, if only because it's a little bit easier, it doesn't take as long. If you'd like, you can use thinner threads of embroidery thread to make your work more detailed. But for now, I'm just using the extra thick thread. Back up. And the stem stitch in general is just really great for outlines. Like, you get a very nice 3D effect. It kind of pops a little bit up from your fabric, which I particularly like. Like that. And then I'm just gonna go back down. So now you have the 3 inner lines of your cactus for the large part, and then what you'll want to do is outline the inner lines for the small cactus, and then you can take your stem stitch and you can either outline in the darker color for the whole cactus. I'm just going to stick to the light thread that I have just to fill in with stem stitches on the inside of the cactus. So I've gone ahead and I've already finished the outlines. As you can see, I've only done 2 outlines for the small cactus, just because with the thicker thread it was harder to do fine detail. So if you're using thinner thread, you can add 3 lines, or you could be like me, just add 2, or if you're really want to, just 1. But I've gone ahead and started filling in the inside of the cactus with the stem stitch, and as you can see, it looks really nice. It's very layered. From far away it looks textured. One thing to note when you're using the stem stitch to fill things in is that you have to keep going in one direction. I'll kind of show you what that means while I'm working on this outer part to show you how to fill it in. But if you start switching directions, you'll start leaving gaps, which you can see the white fabric through, which isn't great because then you have to fix that. But to start with, we're still doing our stem stitch. So you just go up through the fabric, then you have your small loop, go back down, and you come back up next to the first entry, like right there. Going through, I got stuck. Then you do your second loop over. Going to outline that outer edge with my stem stitch. Come back up. And then to finish that line, instead of creating another stem stitch because you're going to end up with your thread on top, I'm just going to do a regular stitch and just go right back down just to end it. So that's probably only going to need one more stem stitch right next to it to fill that area in. What you don't want to do though is come back up on this end right there and basically go backwards along this way, because that's where you'll get your gaps. So you'll come back up over here and then start a new line. Sorry, I keep going off frame a little bit. That just about fills everything up. I'm going to do one small stitch, one more small stem stitch. And then just go back in with a back stitch. Straight stitch. There you go. So that way you can easily fill in areas with a stem stitch. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in this area and then fill in the small cactus, and then I will go on to work on the flower. Alright, so as you can see, I went ahead and filled in with our stem stitch all of the cactus. So we did the outlines in dark green, filled it in with light green, and this is our end result. So next we're going to go ahead and do the flower. So I've already outlined it in yellow just with a straight stitch, just to help to keep the borders. And then now to fill in the flower, we're going to go ahead and put in a satin stitch. So for a satin stitch, it's basically a straight stitch over and over again, and you're just filling everything in. So you just come up, back over, and I just like going from one end, because it's a relatively small flower, from one end of the flower and then back all the way up to the border. When you have straight stitches, so when you're doing a satin stitch and if all the threads are the same length and they're all right next to each other, you're going to start getting pull on your fabric. So having this stitches a little bit different in length is only going to be helpful. You don't want your fabric to bunch. And so you keep going on in this way until you finish filling in the entire flower. If you want to do short little stitches all the way up and down, you can. My preference, because I'm using a very thick thread, is to do this. Just one long thread from bottom to top. And in that way you can do your satin stitch until your flower is all filled up. Okay, so now that we've filled in our flower with our nice satin stitch, now we're going to add some detailing. So I've already added one of the colonial knots here. We're going to add it to the flower just to add like mini flowers to it, just to make it pop a little bit. So what you're going to want to do for your colonial knot is come up through the fabric where you want one of the colonial knots. And then, as I showed you guys earlier, you're going to make a backward C like that. Then you're going to take your needle and you're going to go under it like this and kind of pull. Go under it like that. And then you're going to take your thread and you're going to go over your needle like that. So once you've done that, you can kind of see you've made a figure 8. And pull it a little bit tight, not like super tight, and then you're going to want to go in back, put your needle back in where you came up. So as you hold this tight, you're going to push your needle down. You don't want to have it too tight, so don't pull with all your strength or else you won't be able to pull your needle through, especially with thick thread. That, and then go all the way through, and you have your colonial knot. I'm going to make one more and put it here to kind of cover up that edge. Come back through, make your backward C, take your needle, go under, and take your thread and go over the needle. Create that nice figure 8 like that, and then go in where you came up and pull the thread just slightly, not too tight but just enough. And pull your needle all the way through. Colonial knot. For our next detail, we're going to go ahead and add the spines of the cactus. With the thick thread, it's not as finely detailed, so it doesn't look as nice. But if you're using thin thread, you can go ahead and make some really nice X marks on the inner lines of your cactus just to give it a spiny cactusy kind of quality. If you're using the thick thread, you can decide just to not go with the spines at all. I went ahead, added one, here's another one, and I'm just going to add one to the little cactus, and I'm going to show you really quick, adding one more, how to go ahead and do that. So you'll want to not, like, even though you want a small X, you're going to have to kind of hop at least one thread. So notice how I'm coming up right here. So I'm going to hop one thread and then hop basically 3 threads. Come back down here. Create the first part of the X. I want to pull a little bit tight. I'm going to come up, hopping one of the threads right there, up, and then over. And this is just a straight stitch. And you have a nice little X to kind of show that your cactus is spiny. Now that we've finished our cactus, so we have our cactus all filled in, we have our flower done, we're going to go ahead and do the pot. So the pot, You can either follow along with the way I'm doing it, or you could just choose to go in a completely different direction. This is basically, you can do whatever you want to do. So for the pot, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to do the lip of the pot a light blue, and that's going to be just short satin stitches. So unlike the flower where I used long ones, I'm going to use short ones. And then for the larger part of the pot, I'm just going to do a pattern with the lighter blue and then dark blue. So I'm not even going to bother outlining it, except maybe here at the end. I'm going to come up. And like I said at the beginning, if you're a beginner, the preferred method, instead of tying a knot, I just leave it hanging. So if you can see the back of my cactus, I have a bunch of hanging strings, but they're secured in with the rest of the piece. I'm going to create a short stitch right here. That. And I'm just going to go ahead and do short stitches all the way up. I'm going to do them in varying lengths. As I mentioned before, with a satin stitch, if you do everything one length, you kind of get some pulling fabric, some gaps you'll be able to see right through. So I want to avoid doing that and just have a nice layer of light blue and then go from there. So I'm going to work my way all the way across until it's light blue. For our final part of this embroidery pattern, I'm finishing our pot. So I went ahead, I used a satin stitch to fill in the top lip of the pot, and I did short stitches that kind of alternate so it looks like a weave. And then just to create a design, I did the triangles with a stem stitch, just because we've been using the stem stitch for this design and I thought it looked nice. So I added another one, and then now I'm just going to use the satin stitch and fill in the pot with the dark blue. And so for this one, I'm gonna go in the same direction, so horizontal, but just with the dark blue. I don't want too many textures or patterns by going up and down. And because the triangle's already in there, I don't need to worry about alternating my stitch length. I'm just going to go underneath the light blue just because that's the detailing. I don't want it to get swallowed up by the dark blue. You'll notice how I outlined in the dark blue, just so I knew where my borders were. And it kind of helps because you can come up through the dark blue thread. I'm just going to fill in this little area right here to show you guys. And so we'll just continue on like that until the whole pot is full of dark blue, and then we will be done with our cactus. So for our final step, now that we've embroidered our cactus, we're going to actually turn it into a patch. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it, and then kind of hint at a way to make it a little bit more secure, but this is just the easiest way to do it, which is that we're going to cut around the cactus patch, like leaving about a centimeter, half a centimeter all the way around. And then we're going to take our piece of felt and just hot glue it onto the felt and then just trim the felt. So that's the easiest way. We'll just start with taking out our little cactus. I have some unusual scissors today. You just want to make sure that you don't get too close to your embroidery threads. Just clip it all the way out. Back, so you might want to tuck in the strings, or I'm just going to clip them because it's going to be hot glued down. It shouldn't unravel. Okay. Then when we're gluing it, we're going to go ahead and try and tuck in like that, so it's the least amount of light is showing. I'm just going to lay a bunch of hot glue on. And you guys can be more careful the way that you're doing yours. Strings everywhere. A little bit more hot glue. So as you can see, it looks a little bit rough, but we're going to trim the felt, and that's going to get off a lot of the glue strands. This one, a little bit like that. But you're still going to see some of the white. So what I recommend is that after you trim off your felt, what you can do is take a needle and thread, and so this is going to be a little time-consuming part, and just go all the way around the entire patch in a loop, just as an outline. So you can pick an outline color and then just go around and outline your cactus. But if you're not too worried about it, once you trim off your felt, you have a nice little patch. Trim off extras. And then all you have to do is take your safety pin and then safety pin the back of your cactus patch, and then you are good to go. So after you finish gluing your felt backing and putting in your safety pin, so if you do decide that you don't like the edges around your patch, like I said before, you can go around with a needle and thread and just kind of sew those in like this. So I went ahead, I did a small knot and tucked it in between the embroidery linen and the felt, and then I just went around. So all you have to do is go up and try not to go up through the cactus, and then just around, and so that creates a nice little pattern on the side. It seals in your edges, and it looks a lot neater. And then you just go around, and when you're ready to seal it, you can just seal it with a small knot so it's not as obvious. And then you will have the end of your patch. You'll have your patch all finished. You can see the hot glue makes it a little bit harder to pull your needle and thread through, but it's still possible. And then I'm just going to seal it with a small knot. Go around one more time just in case. just flip it, and there you have your very nice cactus patch where you can just put it on anything you like. So thank you for joining us here at the Aurora Public Library for watching our video about how to make an embroidered cactus patch. I hope you had a fun time, and if you have any comments or questions about this craft, feel free to leave it in the comment box below. I hope you all have a wonderful day.